In what ways did your production use, develop, or challenge codes and conventions of real media products? My selected genre was psychological thriller. I initially analysed the codes and conventions of psychological thrillers by watching many films of the genre, such as The Machinist, Fight Club, Orphan, Insomnia, and Black Swan, and so on. Throughout our production opening, I used a number of techniques that I'd learned from my research that professionals use on a number of their films. These consisted of the use of various shots and angles, for example, like the two-shot and the over-the-shoulder shot. Rather than challenging the conventions of the genre, I decided to meet them and adapt them in my own subtle ways. This is the best choice for my film. Rather than taking a film for approach and taking on real-life issues and making the production gritty and almost documentative, I wanted to move away from the typical every story has a happy end, as this is both conventional to the genre and unique. By using the same techniques that were used in Silence of the Lambs, I hoped that it would have the same effect on audiences as the opening. The other ways which I wanted to meet the forms of film was the use of bright, high-key and natural lighting. This is a contrast to that of most horror and psychological thriller films, as they usually have very low-key and dull lighting about them. How does your media product represent particular social groups? In terms of my production, I wanted to avoid all stereotypes, slightly similar to other films of the genre. When imagining my characters initially, I knew social class was a thing I did not want to emphasise whatsoever. The dialogue was neutral, i.e. there was no particularly posh or otherwise dialect. Only dialect that reflects the character's position. For example, Caroline's had to be somewhat sophisticated as she is an educated psychiatrist woman. Even though Sophia's costume reflects somewhat of a possibly lower class, my aim was to portray someone suffering from a mental health disorder struggling to even get out of bed in the morning, rather than someone of a lower class, although the character would most likely be unemployed too. Caroline's costume changes throughout, so no clear social group can really be established, although she obviously has a prestigious job. What kind of institution might distribute your media product and why? I placed Lionsgate as the sole institution of therapy, as Lionsgate often specialises in horrors and thrillers, as well as high-budget Hollywood films, thus having high appeal. A studio such as Warner Brothers or Sony Pictures wouldn't be as appropriate, however, as these are too mainstream of companies and only produce the most popular blockbuster movies, which mine would not aim to be. I was also toying with the idea of Ghost House Studios being an institution involved, which is famous for producing horror and thriller films such as The Conjuring. I thought that Ghost House Studios, having produced so many thrillers such as Therapy would have a wide appeal. But in the end, I decided just to stick with Lionsgate, as this would have an even wider appeal, having been involved in many other genre films. When I was looking for distribution companies of the finished product that would give me good advertising, I began to think of studios that would not be any good, such as Pixar Animation and Disney, as these would not be involved in such a gritty psychological horror movie. Who would be the audience for your product? In terms of our target audience and demographics, the age group would be anyone over the age of 15, as this is the age certificate on our opening. I decided to put the production as age 15 due to the violence mostly. According to the BBFC website, films rated age 15 and over are rated such due to strong violence, strong language, portrayals of sexual activity, discriminatory language or behaviour, and drug taking. In my opening, you'd see a girl overdosing on prescription pills, for example. The themes and parts of my footage are inappropriate to be rated U, PG or 12. Also, the complexity of the gritty plot, emotionally driven characters, and dark, fast-paced storyline would be completely misunderstood to those under the age of 15, such as children. Other examples of similar films to ours with the same rating include Looper and Donnie Darko. Although restricting the age rating for our film possesses the disadvantage of restricting the number of people who would go and see it, the age rating is an advantage, as we as a group are free to make more beneficiary decisions involving pre- and post-production process, such as including swearing and violence. Teenagers tend to enjoy psychological thriller films almost as much as adults over 20. as well as films of other genres, such as comedy. An example of this is how well both Black Swan and Step Brothers did with younger people in the box office, bridging the age gap between child and adult. Film ratings 15 rated movies actually do considerably well. As a teenager myself, I agree that teenagers from the UK and more generally the USA and other parts of the world jump at the chance to experience more mature films legally available to them, rather than child's films, such as The Smurfs and Frozen. An example of age 15 rated films that have done extremely well compared to other films include World War Z and The Heat. With Therapy, I aim to create a film opening that appeals to a more mature audience, allowing us to make it grittier, more violent, more serious, and to properly meet the codes and conventions of psychological thrillers. How did you attract and address your audience? I was going to use old B-movie posters to primarily advertise the film. When discussing this to the group, we thought this would be a brilliant way of advertising the film if we put these posters up on street lamps around the centre of Birmingham. We thought this would be a great way of showing the film in its best light. When designing the film poster for Therapy, we looked at a number of colour schemes that we had decided on very contrasting colours for the poster. Also, we had planned on making an interview tape that would be advertised on TV, like the Doctor Who 50th anniversary, when it looks as though the TV has been hacked by the Doctor. So we were going to make a tape that shows the therapist trying to kill a patient and the patient saying, "Help me." When we thought of this, we found that this was much better than the B-movie posters, and we had tried to make this the first priority in finishing first. We really liked this idea because the advert was always played, and after some time it had gotten stuck in the audience's head, and after more time had passed, it had become a very popular household talking point. While the production of both of these was going on, we had to think of more ideas, and one that we thought of was not used was the idea of hiring actors to do a scene from the film. For example, a chase scene around the centre of Birmingham. However, this idea was scrapped, as we were worried that we would end up getting into trouble for doing this, i.e. for copyright reasons or disturbing the piece without a licence. With this in mind, we had the idea of advertising the money by hiring people to talk about it out loud, so people can hear and then they will hopefully trend on and begin to talk about it with their own friends. This will also require actors. What have you learned about the technologies from the process of constructing this product? The main thing I had to do was learn how to use Final Cut Express. This is software that is used for editing by many people. I've used this software for editing before. The program that I've used in the past was Sony Vegas, so I was keen to begin learning how to use Final Cut. Final Cut is renowned for its use by famous movie directors, the Coen brothers, who have directed Two Grit and No Country for Old Men. They were also winners of 4 Oscars. A problem I faced was that the clicking sounds made by the tripod could be heard during panning in certain shots, such as in the office scenes and the bathroom scene. To overcome this, I lowered the audio levels at particular points and added music over the top to mask the clicks using the pen tool. A final problem I faced was the aspect ratios were inconsistent. I fixed this by zooming using the wireframe feature on the shots that were inconsistent. Looking back at your preliminary tasks, what do you feel you have learned in progression from it to the full product? I feel from the preliminary task that we have learned many things, such as how to use the equipment properly and the basic techniques of filming, such as the 180-degree rule. Another thing it taught me was the difference between spatial and temporal editing and how this would benefit our production. Another thing that it taught me was that I need to account for the environment filmed in, such as making sure that reflection and windows aren't a problem. I didn't originally account for this, and we had to reshoot the preliminary. This made me more careful of factors such as this when filming my final piece. Additionally, the preliminary taught us that we should shoot each frame at least twice, so that we make sure that we get it correct.